Hi, and welcome to Student Motivation in PBL with Computer Game Design. Meet Andrea Collins, who teaches computer game design in San Jose. Student motivation is a challenge for many teachers. Motivation can be elusive, and since it's largely intrinsic, it's very difficult to create on demand. All teachers can really do is create an environment where motivation is most likely to develop. Andrea admits that initially she has an easier time than many teachers because most students love the idea of computer games, so students like Foster come to class ready to dive into game crafting. The hard part comes is when they have to learn the basics of programming. When she would start teaching things like algorithms, variables, operators, conditional statements, looping statements, procedures, error handling, debugging, object-oriented programming technique, user interface design, and software modeling, everything dragged. Andrea even had students drop her class because they said it was so boring. Andrea admits that part of that was her fault. She was teaching the way she had been taught. She started with the basics so they could learn the process, and then somewhere in the distant future they would get to apply what they'd learned. But her students just couldn't wait that long. They lost their motivation and stopped learning long before Andrea ever got to the fun part of class. All that changed last year when Andrea learned about PBL, or project-based learning. She says it's so simple, I can't believe I didn't always teach this way. Now Andrea presents students with a challenging, real-world problem that they work in groups to solve. The difference in their motivation is dramatic. The key, she says, is that the problem must be truly challenging. Nothing that one student can solve on a smartphone. It must be hard enough and big enough in scope that it actually requires a group to complete. For students like Sasha, who generally prefer to work alone, PBL is good because it forces her to develop her collaboration skills. She is still able to think and code on her own, but she's working with her group to contribute using her specific skills. Andrea no longer teaches the basics before assigning the project. Instead, she starts with the real-world problem and lets the students figure out what they need to know in order to complete it. They come to her and ask for the learning they need. Andrea gives them a list of deliverables or outcomes for the project so they know what they need to accomplish, but she lets students like Jacob take the lead in deciding what he needs to learn. Another important aspect of PBL is the idea of student voice and choice, which is a key to motivation. Students want to choose the path they'll take to complete the project and want a say in what that completion looks like. With PBL, Andrea is able to provide that flexibility. Now, some students prefer to know exactly what's expected, and they need more structure, but PBL allows Andrea to accommodate both types. Andrea does admit that she has had to raise her tolerance for noise in her classroom. When you have 6 groups meeting and deciding who the hero is going to be and what obstacles they'll overcome in the game, that gets loud. But I walk around listening in and answering questions, and they're almost always on task and very motivated. Letting students direct their own learning has all but eliminated behavior problems in Andrea's class. She remembers hearing that 95% of all classroom behavior problems can be eliminated by creating a curriculum that is so fun, meaningful, and relevant that students can't help but want to do it, but she'd never really seen it in action before PBL. One example of a project is one she found on the CTE website called The Hero's Journey STEM Integrated Project, written by Emmanuel Oleandor, Jeremy Sutton, and Vivian Pastel. Having to research their favorite video game characters, then design a new character to make their own game using Video Game Maker and Scratch programming language engages her students so fully that there's very little of the attentional-based behavior issues that used to plague Andrea's class. There's no more falling asleep in the back row, she says. Another aspect of PBL that's very important is the idea that there is an authentic audience, a real-world audience, who will be viewing the results. The idea of a public presentation of learning raises the bar of accountability and really engages her students. It raises their level of concern in a way that a simple grade by a teacher can't. Because Andrea has connections in nearby Silicon Valley, finding programmers in the field to act as her students' public audience is a natural fit. Knowing that a real game designer is going to see what the group has created increases her students' motivation more than any extra credit bonus that she'd ever tried before. For students like Lyda, who want to pursue computer game design as a career, Project-based learning creates an authentic learning experience that closely resembles the kind of work real programmers do. Andrea says, "My students are encountering the same issues real game designers face, and they're finding real solutions. It's fantastic to watch." Thanks for watching.